Hello, C3 competitors. In this video, we're going to be talking about what you might need to know for one of your challenges called Operation Leave the Lab. And this challenge will have the format of an escape room. So in this escape room, you'll get a series of questions and tasks that relate to forensic science and the human body. And you need to answer these questions to be able to escape the room. So how did you get locked in this room in the first place? Well, you work for a C3 detective agency and you received an anonymous tip-off about a potentially illegal operation coming from an abandoned hospital. And you and your fellow detectives decide to go to the hospital to investigate. And you wind up investigating the laboratory and then you get stuck in there. But luckily, you brought along a couple of background files with you and you know a lot of science, technology, engineering, math, and arts that can help you catch the criminal and therefore escape the room. So some things you'll need to know is cryptography, composites, chemical traces, and serology. So starting with cryptography. Cryptography is a process of converting ordinary plain text, which is understandable to our minds, into some unintelligible text. So often this is a random jumble of numbers or random jumble of letters. And we can do the reverse of this and decode that unintelligible text. And that is probably something you might be expected to do. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So one of the most famous kinds of codes you may have come across is Morse code. And Morse code uses a series of dots and dashes that correspond to different letters. And usually we see this used on ships, in telecommunication, and it used to be used in telegraphs back when there was no phones. Another form of cryptography is binary code. And we usually see this when we use computers. So this is essentially the language of computers, and it uses only zeros and ones in different combinations. And a last example of a kind of code is called Caesar's Cipher. And it's actually one of the oldest codes that was first used in 100 BC by Julius Caesar. And in this code, they use the alphabet, so they just shift the alphabet a couple of letters to the right or a couple of letters to the left. So they jumble up all the letters in a word. Next, we have composites. And if we watch any detective shows, we might have seen the detectives use something called facial composites to try and identify a suspect. So this is where an artist tries to recreate a realistic to scale representation of a suspect's face using witness eye accounts and descriptions. And there's two kinds of types of this. So first is the feature-based composite construction. And this is sort of what was used more in the past. We might have come across it before, and it's basically when they try to build the face feature by feature. So they might have a binder and they flip through a bunch of different kinds of eyes until they find one that match and then try to choose a nose that matches and then a mouth and then maybe a chin that matches. So it's taking all the separate features and trying to put them together. The second kind of composite is holistic-based composite construction. And this is where they try to take the whole face and draw the whole face together. So instead of looking at it in pieces, we're looking at it as a whole. Now, something else we'll need for the escape room is an understanding of chemical traces. Now, usually when we think of investigations and criminal investigations, we think of biological traces, right? What the criminal leaves behind at the crime scene. And this could be hair, this could be blood. But there's also non-biological traces, and this can come in the form of physical samples. For example, the fibers from a cloth that the criminal might have been wearing, or even chemical samples. So perhaps the suspect used a certain solution, drug, or even shampoo that the investigators can identify using chemical analysis. And the last thing we'll need to know is something called serology. And so that's the study of blood types. And blood types are determined by the presence of antigens on red blood cells. And these antigens determine whether we're an A blood type, a B blood type, an AB blood type, or an O blood type. And they also determine whether we're positive or negative. So that's our rhesus factor or our Rh factor. And from these blood types, we can determine whether certain blood types are compatible with each other, whether one's a suitable donor and a suitable recipient. And so this table goes across it really nicely. It tells us which blood types have what antigens. So for example, here for the O blood type, they have no antigens, but they do have antibodies. So the thing with the O blood type, it means you can use the O blood type and donate it to anyone, right? The O type is a universal blood donor, but since it has anti-A and anti-B antibodies, it can't accept anything from type A, type B, or type AB blood because those antibodies will attack the A and the B antigens on the other blood types. Now, that's all you're going to need to know for the escape room. So I wish you good luck in your investigation.